Here's a touchy subject: microtransactions. One thing that is universally criticized and hated, yet it's strangely universally accepted. Well, it's not that black and white, but I see microtransactions as a double-edged sword. Microtransactions have become a popular method to increase revenue in the gaming industry through a model called free-to-play. And while regarded as successful, gamers fear it, but more on that later. Let's look at the history of free-to-play and microtransactions. And for the purposes of this video, I'm also going to be throwing in DLC too. The earliest known record that I could find was a graphical MUD made in 1995 called Furcadia. It was a furry role-playing game, although I really wouldn't call it a game. It was more of a glorified chat room. But that's what all MUDs, mushes, and mucks are. Being graphical, people were able to make their character, although it was just sprites with palette swaps. Nothing really advanced. But if you wanted your character to be a certain species or to have wings, you had to pay for it, and the modification only lasted a few months unless you paid a much larger fee to make it permanent. Then Neopets came in, but I don't remember them charging money for the site's in-game currency, but apparently they do. There's also RuneScape and MapleStory, and the list goes on. They offered their services for free, and if you wanted more, you had to pay for those extras, which there's nothing wrong with that. Then with the release of the 7th generation of gaming systems, and because they could connect to the internet, we saw DLC. For a small fee, you could buy add-ons to your game, extra maps or weapons, or just cosmetic things. You could unlock certain items early on to give you an advantage. Some RPGs would sell expansions through DLC too. Then after the iPhone and Android were released, we saw a huge boom in cell phone gaming. Developers started releasing games for $1, but then they started releasing them for free but with throw-in ads or added in microtransactions. Most of these games were a go as far as you can type of game, and you could get extra characters, skins, outfits, weapons that you could buy with in-game currency that you collected as you played. The business model proved to be very profitable as gamers could just buy upgrades instead of grinding for the in-game money. It also opens up gaming to people who may not be able to afford to buy games all the time. It gives gamers who have very little money to spend a chance to play something. Like how certain MMORPGs like DC Universe Online, Terra, Star Wars The Old Republic went free to play and have seen a lot of success in switching to this business model. When I think microtransactions and DLC, I think with great power comes great responsibility. It's a great way for developers to make games, draw in a larger crowd, and make more money as the chances are greater that you'll have more people playing the game if it's free. And you'd make more money if you give them the choice to buy in-game currency faster than they would through regular play. But there is a dark side to this. There are free-to-play games that prohibit progress to the point where you practically need to pay to continue. One of the best examples that I can think of is Candy Crush Saga. The game seems to operate like those claw machines where you can only win a prize after a certain amount of plays. In case you didn't know, claw machines are rigged to dispense a prize after it's collected enough money. Candy Crush Saga operates in the same manner. When you get into the later levels, it appears that it's more of a game of chance rather than skill. There's times that you just don't get the colors you need to complete a level and then you'll fail it. It gives you the chance to buy 5 moves for $1. That's 20 cents a move. And what if you're 10 moves away from beating a level? Then there's other games like Zombie Road Trip and Jetpack Joyride. They don't hinder your progression at all as it's based on your skill with the game. The more skill you have, the more you'll be rewarded in the end. Yes, you can buy in-game currency, but as long as you keep working at the game, you don't need to because it's fair. They're not putting the next levels behind paywalls. And that's what gamers are afraid of. While this method works for free-to-play games, it's not going to work for big-budget titles. In the video where I talk about the improbability of another video game crash, I said that John Calhoun, the producer of Dead Space 3, said that there's gamers that have only played games on their cell phones and microtransactions are the standard for them, and this is where the danger comes in. Dead Space cost $60 initially, but then they added in the microtransactions. There's about 9 add-ons that you could buy for a total of $50, which brings the total cost of the game to $110. Then there's material packs that are $1, so depending on how many of those you buy, the game could very well cost twice as much as the initial cost. You could very well be paying $120 total. That's Dead Space 3 plus another game. Now, I'm not opposed to DLC, but I do believe that DLC should not go anywhere near the original cost of the game. And the scary thing is, what if this proves to make a lot of money? You know what they say, a sucker is born every minute. And that's really what the gaming industry is hoping gamers will do, that they'll buy all these add-ons without noticing how much the total cost of the game is increasing. We've all read the stories where someone or their kid was playing a mobile game and just kept on paying money for extra in-game currency or moves just so they could keep on playing. But then there's other problems that can arise from this. During game development, things can get cut and removed from the game as they are either problematic during development or they need to cut development time if it was running on too long. and sometimes these cut items return as DLC. Is there anything wrong with that though? No, there isn't. But what if they start cutting more and more stuff purposely just to make it DLC? Then you're paying $60 for a partial game and need to buy the rest of it, like how some of the Mass Effect games had Day 1 DLC. Obviously that stuff was cut out, but they decided to add it back in and charge people for it. Day 1 DLC sends the message that this was originally in the game, but was removed just to make extra money. If a game company is going to give us all this DLC and do things like microtransactions, then they should lower the cost of the game because we shouldn't have to buy extra stuff just to make it a complete game. That's one thing that gamers are fearing, that developers and publishers will start putting out $60 games and then have to pay money every step of the way, ultimately making it so they have to pay to beat the game. Which brings up yet another fear, paying to win. This is something that really affects multiplayer games though. In my Kotaku free-to-play rant, I admonished the author who complained about DC Universe Online going free-to-play. He was complaining about now that the game is free-to-play that all the scrubs would come in and ruin the game. Yeah, he did use the term scrub, and that elitist attitude is something that I'm going to talk about in another video. If you pay to win, that means you have to buy virtual equipment with real-world money just so you could go in prepared to play. Having to buy weapon packs and ammunition just so you have an advantage, or need to buy just to stand a chance. Paying to win greatly upsets the balance of gameplay. If you don't pay for the equipment, then you're going to be at an extreme disadvantage. Then there's the other downfall of paying to win. More than likely, if you die, you lose all that equipment and have to pay for it all over again. The perfect example of these practices is the War Z, which is now known as Infestation Survivor Stories. It had the initial cost of $15 just to buy the game, but it was of extremely poor quality, extremely buggy with an unbalanced AI, and wasn't even complete, but it was also set up in a free-to-play manner. And when you died, which was highly likely as zombies took several hits to kill, you would lose all your equipment that you paid for, so you'd have to pay for it all over again. That game was also made by the same guy who made Big Rigs Over the Road Racing, so something like that should be expected. I'm not worried about unskilled players taking advantage of pay to win or pay to play just to get the best equipment, because if they don't have the skill to play the game, then they're just wasting their money, as it doesn't matter if you have the best gear, you won't get anywhere without the skill. So yes, microtransactions and DLC are a double-edged sword. They can be profitable and open up a game to gamers that really can't afford to buy games, and it can expand games to increase their life and add new things to keep the game fresh. But there are companies out there who try to capitalize on microtransactions by charging you for every little thing and hindering your progression, and purposely cut things just to make them DLC. And there's a looming threat of having to pay $60 for a game, then needing to buy everything just to beat it. And next time I'll talk about the elitist attitude some gamers have.